Hey biscuits. It is almost a new year, so I thought in honor of a year of not traveling, I would do a Q&A answer with the worst trips that I've taken. So these are all questions of what are the worst different parts of trips that I've taken, because I've missed travel this year. You biscuits know that follow along on my main channel that I do a bunch of family budget-friendly travel videos, right? That's a huge section of what I normally do for work, and this year that's not been happening for obvious reasons, my biscuits. Yes, my love. So in honor of not traveling and in the hopes that this coming new year things will be back to good things, we can travel again, it'll mellow out at some point. I thought I would talk about some crazy trips. I haven't looked at all these questions, and I might add in some of my own, because have I been on one? I mean, I've had interesting segments of trips. I love traveling, I do, and I always feel like one of the secrets to traveling that nobody tells you is that your travel experiences are as good as the person or people you travel with, right? Some of my craziest travel negative things that have happened have been because I've been traveling with somebody that hates travel, that travels poorly, doesn't plan things. Now, some of my travel misadventures have been my own dang fault. Generally, I would say my biggest self-inflicted travel things have been when I've been being a cheapskate and being stupid about it, like trying to save money, but then you don't end up saving anything. Sometimes you spend more because you did something stupid to try and be cheap. So okay, let's get to the first question. The worst place that I've stayed. That's tough. Okay, there was one place I stayed that I actually checked out the next day. I had it booked for like a week. And it was intolerably bad. There's a second runner-up that's really close. This one was in Barcelona. And it had a bed that wasn't a bed, it was like a sofa that you then had to turn into a bed. But it said, like in the description, this was a totally different rental, right? The reality and the description were very different. And it was such a hard bed that it was actually softer to sleep on the ground, which I think is maybe what I ended up doing. You couldn't sleep there. The kitchen was tiny compared to the photos, like not usable. And the whole space, it was just god-awful. It was dirty, it was funky, it was loud, and there was nothing to like sit on or lay on that you could rest on. So I made it one night, and I had to find different accommodations. They would not refund me. It was a vacation rental by owner. They wouldn't refund me the money. They had no problem with being totally deceptive in their description. It was just one of those places you walk into and go, yeah, this doesn't look like a good idea. It was terrible. So that's probably the worst place I've stayed at, because I literally couldn't stay there. I actually had to leave. Yeah, that was terrible. It's rare that I will actually leave a vacation rental, especially if I can't get my money refunded, because they really, even though they lie about stuff, vacation rental by owner places, you know, Airbnbs, they really try to never refund you, even if they know they're in the wrong. There was one place that I did get refunded for because they booked me in, I was scheduled, I came in, I had the key code for the keys, came in, turned out they'd rented my room out from under me, and somebody else was already booked in and staying in this room, and so I was just standing there with my kid, trying to get a hold of them. They wouldn't answer their phone, they wouldn't answer their emails, and ended up having to go stay in a motel. This was in my travel vlogs. This one was in Arizona. And it was crazy because I actually had to just go stay in a motel. Never had anybody book out a space out from under me and then not cancel, just not tell you. It was very weird. Yeah, it was not good, not good. You know, I really love doing vacation rentals. I love having a kitchen. That's the #1 thing for me. And I also really like normally staying in somebody's extra room or their guest house, because then you can talk to them. They know the area. It's a good way to know something. So I really like vacation rentals, but man, there are some bad ones. I've traveled enough, and I know people that say, oh, I've traveled for years and I've never had a bad issue. I'm impressed. I've had some really negative vacation rental issues. I would say most of the time it's deceptive listings. And that's really tricky because you just don't know. Yeah, It's so tricky. I try to give advice on some of my other videos on my main channel on how to handle Airbnb and vacation rentals and how to find good ones. But if people are just gonna lie blatantly, that's a tricky one. Okay, the worst meal I've eaten. I mean, bad food or food poisoning? Because I feel like there's a difference. You could have a great meal and get terrible food poisoning from it and then be like, no, that was a bad mistake. I'm trying to think of really bad food I've eaten. Oh my goodness. I want to say, yeah, oh, you know what? Cuba. Cuba's the worst food I've ever had in a restaurant. Yeah, it was, do I want to say inedible? I ate it, I was hungry. It was disgusting. Yes, Cuba, worst food I've ever had. And some were highly recommended by a translator. I was really surprised. It was so bad. And maybe that's because I wasn't getting a red meat dish and like they were better at their red meat dishes. I don't know. But oh my god, it was really bad. So Cuba's the worst. Yeah, the worst food. I was so hungry after that trip. So hungry. I remember getting back to another hotel, another country, and just being like, oh, thank God I can eat food. Thank you, dear God. I'm so hungry. I'll even take a salad, anything. I'm just so hungry. The most dangerous spot I've ever been in, so traveled to. That's, you know, it's so hard to know what are you overreacting to as not being from there and what is really dangerous. I stayed in a part of London that made me really uncomfortable to the point where I would always try to get us back before dark. Yeah, so maybe a part of London that just, you know, when you're somewhere and you just feel really unsafe, that's probably the most unsafe I've felt, which is funny because like I've been mugged in other countries, right? But it was just like a place where consistently, this was where my vacation rental was, so like every day it just felt really unsafe. Yeah, I'm gonna say certain sections in East London I really felt uncomfortable in. Yeah, and I didn't think anybody would help if anything went wrong. That was the kind of, I know they wouldn't because stuff did go wrong and I tried to ask for help and no, it was not gonna happen. Which is weird, you wouldn't think London would be like the most unsafe place, but for me, for my vibes, my feelings, that would be my answer. Worst flight I've ever taken. I mean, Abraham and I had a flight from SeaTac to Heathrow where at the beginning of the flight, the guy in front of us vomited all over everything, was super sick. And it took them hours to clean it up and to like move us. And but yeah, worst flight. I mean, I think the worst flight was actually flying into KC, Kansas City. And it was stormy and it was like we had to circle forever because it was too stormy to land. It was a thunderstorm. It was super just like, plane was just shaking all over the place. You weren't sure if your plane was going to get hit by lightning. That was really scary. That was probably the scariest flight. Because it just seemed like things could go wrong really quickly on this flight. And in an unexpected way. You could tell even the flight crew and the captain were concerned. Like, the tone in their voices was not giving you confidence. A place I'd never go again. Oh, this is gonna make people mad. I feel like this is one of those questions where people get grumpy when you say this. I don't think I would go to Berlin again. I really found the people very unfriendly. Like exceptionally unfriendly. Shockingly so. Yeah, I don't think I would go to Berlin again. Yeah, that was probably like the least friendly place I've ever been to. Which is saying something because I've been to some places. Yeah, it was completely unfriendly from start to finish. Like, we were literally just like, we could not wait. Like, if we could have changed our tickets and left sooner, we would have. It was that bad. So Berlin, I wouldn't go back to Berlin. Worst tour guide. I'm trying, you know, most of the tour guides I've gotten, on the tour, like, you know, like a day tour kind of thing. I've really enjoyed, or they have, you know, maybe they aren't great, but they aren't bad. I had one tour guide when I did the Cotswolds in England that was really bad. Like, didn't do anything, didn't tell you anything, didn't make sure you got from one spot to the other, screwed up everybody's meal and times, wouldn't sit or talk with anybody, just ignored you or like turned their back to you, literally, when other people were trying to talk to you. He was a horrible tour guide, absolutely dreadful. I like to take day tours. I like to do walking tours. I'll do a bus tour if that works. I love tours. I love local guides. I think it's a wonderful way to get to know an area. He was an absolutely horrendous tour. Like, I was so mad. If I could have gotten off the tour and just, like, if it had been a walking tour, I would have just left. But it was a bus tour on this particular day. Dreadful tour guide. Clearly he should not be giving tours. Let me put it that way. Is that all? Okay, those were all the questions. So I think, when I think about bad travel, don't be so cheap that you end up screwing yourself over in travel ideas. Because I think personally, that's where I've gone the most wrong. Is like, I've tried to find the cheapest vacation rental, or I've tried to find cheap dining, or, you know, I've refused to take a taxi, and then I've had to take multiple buses in other languages that I don't understand. And I think that those have caused unsafe situations. I've gotten super lost, almost hit by a bus, you know. It's just smart. My sister faced that too when she was in Peru, where she was like, man, I should have spent a little bit of extra money to take a train instead of the bus, because it was just a nightmare. Yeah, so that's my biggest piece of advice, is like, I love budget travel. Being able to afford to travel, right? You know, not having to save up for like 5 years to go on one trip. But you gotta know where and when to spend money on things. And that's been a lesson that I've had to learn through just huge trial and error. And one of the big ones is, you know, going to destinations that you can afford to go to, right? Like, I have to sometimes skip a destination I want to go to because I think it's just going to be too expensive. Like, to do it cheaply, it would be to do it unsafely or to just not enjoy it. Yeah, that's my biggest worst travel thing, is just like, you got to know where you can afford to travel, that's safe and good and wonderful and inspiring, and then how to spend what your budget is and where. Yeah, like, I don't eat out a ton when I go. I make my own food, so I save my money on that, but then maybe I spend money on a museum pass, so I can go see a lot of museums, that kind of thing. Okay, biscuits, my camera's flashing at me. It says I should say bye. Happy New Year, my wonderful biscuits. The year ahead is full of DIY projects on this channel. I've got to do car detailing, I'm doing new flooring, I'm doing sheetrock, I'm doing all sorts of projects along with our regular cleaning content. So I think it's gonna be a fun New Year. Big quarantine hugs, loves. I love y'all. Give this a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video.